It should never.
Okay, so we'll call this meeting back to order. Our next item should be the Air Pollution Control Officer's report, but we do have an action item or a public hearing to get to. So we'll move to that without objection. So item 4, public hearing, Sacramento Regional 2008 Ambient Air Quality Standards.
Before we proceed, I need to...
You're not on. Oh, yeah, please, can you report out from closed session?
It's not working.
I'll just try to speak loudly. Before we proceed, I need to report out on the board's action in closed session. And the board authorized me to pursue litigation in 3 matters.
Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Mark Lautzenheiser. I'm the Division Manager of the Program Coordination Division at the district. And I'll wait just one moment for us to go and get the slides up on the screen for you here.
Give me 1 second. There it goes.
So good morning. What I'm up in front to talk to you about today is the Sacramento Regional 8-Hour Ozone Attainment Plan and what's also called the Reasonable Further Progress Plan. These are elements that we're going to be submitting for the state implementation plan. So just as a very quick overview, we're going to be going over some background information regarding the SIP, State Implementation Plan, a little bit about where we are, where we're heading, and what the next steps are. So real quickly, I know that being on this board, you probably already have a pretty good feel on this one, but since this is going to be leading into a public hearing on this, I just want to very quickly cover what is the plan in regards to. It's regarding ozone. And ozone is formed by a combination of oxides of nitrogen, or NOx, and volatile organic compounds, a lot of times referred to as hydrocarbons. For anyone watching this later on or interested, a lot of times VOCs, as we call the volatile organic compounds, are what you smell like off gasoline, your perfumes, things of that nature. The paint, it's the volatiles that come off of different things. And we have a number of different sources. Some of these are naturally occurring. Some of them are local businesses. And some of them are not under the direct control of the district, but they are mobile, on-road and off-road type sources of emissions. So why are we concerned about ozone? It's the health effects. You have increased asthma, bronchitis, risk of heart disease. You end up seeing increased absences from school and work. For any of you that are involved in, especially during the summer months when we have the Spare the Air days and it's a particularly bad day, if you're out there trying to do any exercise or if you have children doing sporting events, you notice where it's a little bit harder for them to breathe on those bad air quality days because of the ozone readings. So the other area that we talk about a lot and the area where we are focused in terms of our ozone plan is what's called the Sacramento Federal Non-Attainment Area, or the SFNA. And that is actually all of Sacramento County, all of Yolo County, good portion of Placer, El Dorado, and Solano, and the very southern part of Sutter County. As you can see on the map, although it's a little bit elongated horizontally, you can see the boundaries of the SFNA. So when we do talk about this plan and the attainment status of our region, this is the boundary that we were talking about for ozone. So when we talk about ozone, there was an even older 1-hour standard, which I'm not going to go into today, but for an 8-hour standard, EPA first changed to an 8-hour standard back in 1997. That standard at the time was 84 parts per billion. We are currently near the end of our SIP plan for that standard. The deadline for that one comes up at the end of next year. So we'll be coming back hopefully with information on how we've attained that standard in the next several months. In 2008, a new standard was adopted, more health conscious, of 75 parts per billion. That is the plan before you today that we are here to talk about. Just as an informational one, there is a 2015 standard that was promulgated. It is currently going through review at the federal level in terms of the designations, and we expect that we'll be hearing those designation status in the next few months. So that'll be the next plan and efforts that we are working on. The way the process works, though, is once the federal government, the EPA in this case, has set the standards, which are a binding commitment for the regions to achieve, is that it's actually the states. That's why we talk about a state implementation plan. The states submit a plan on how they either will stay in attainment, or if they're not in attainment, how they will get there. And the way it works in California is the local regions go ahead and, knowing our problems best, look at our attainment status, come forward with a plan, and then the state amends the state submittal to EPA. So for non-attainment areas, EPA goes through a process to designate. So I mentioned a moment ago the 2008 standard. It actually wasn't until 2012 that EPA came through with the formal designations. And at that point, for non-attainment areas, if you're not at that standard already, you can be anywhere from a marginal attainment status up to, if you're South Coast or San Joaquin, an extreme designation status. And the difference between these two bookends, if you will, is both the amount of time they are going to grant you to come in compliance with the standard and just any other extra requirements you may have to do in the interim. So you may say, well, hey, extreme just gets us more time. Isn't that a good thing? Then you have lower offset threshold levels. You have other requirements that get placed in order to try and make sure that you get there sooner versus if you're on the closer end to attainment. So we were officially designated severe non-attainment in 2012. It was July of 2012. And for severe, that basically was a 15-year time clock for us to propose and reach attainment. So formally, our designation is we need to come into attainment by July 20th of 2027. However, throughout the document, and if anyone had some fun reading through the 530 pages, yes, I actually have read this entire document multiple times. We actually need to attain by 2026 from a practical standpoint, because you actually have to demonstrate attainment showing a complete ozone season. So in our case, that means we won't have finished a season in 2027, so we do need to show that we attain by 2026. So what's involved from the federal planning standpoint in our submittal is our plan ultimately needs to show that we can attain the standard by the time frame. It requires that we show reasonable further progress, which has been defined as, I'm averaging it out, but it's 3% progress per year toward our attainment goals. It also involves a transportation conformity piece, which we've worked very closely on with the Sacramento Area Council of Government, SACOG. And it also requires that we take a look and show that we are demonstrating as expeditiously as possible. It's not just that you have until that deadline, but can you get there sooner? And what that involves is a review of what are called reasonable available control measures. And that's something that we looked at locally for Sacramento, and the adjoining districts that are part of the SFNA took a look at a very large number of control measures as part of this plan development. So I'm actually really happy to be up here and tell you the following news. Our plan actually has us proposing to attain 2 years early, by 2024 as opposed to 2026. This is with no new control measures being proposed for the region. That's not to say you still won't see me coming for you and my staff coming for you with some additional rules that are already either on the books from past plans or that are required by other reasons. But from an attainment standpoint, we are not looking at doing any new control measures over the next few years in order to attain the standard. So this is no additional burden on our local businesses while still cleaning up the air for our citizens in an expedited manner. We will be relying on existing regulations, so that nothing will be going away, but it does mean things like the Spare the Air will still be very critical for us as we move forward, plus the existing programs we already have in place. With that good news, though, I just want to give you a quick overview on where we were at the time we were designated in terms of the inventory and how we're meeting those different criteria I showed you earlier for meeting the requirements of the state implementation plan. So we were designated in 2012. So the charts, the graph on the left is our VOC, our volatile organic compound emission totals in 2012 from an inventory, and the one on the right is NOx. The one big takeaway I would like you, though, to take from these particular charts is the mobile portion of the emission budgets. This has been true for a number of years for the Sacramento area. We don't have significantly large industries. We don't have refineries in the area. We don't have significant industrialized areas. And so a big portion of both the VOC and NOx emissions are mobile related. Basically just going to the importance of the continuity of our various incentive programs and the state regulations on mobile sources. For VOC, you can see it's over 50% in total for mobile emissions, and on the NOx, it's even a larger portion. It's up at almost 90% from the 2012 inventory. So that is the baseline that we have to show for the reasonable further progress that I mentioned a moment ago in terms of the 3%. So what this graph shows real quick is the gray line, and the reason why it's a steeper slope to begin with is that first gap is a 6-year gap. Every other gap there is a 3-year gap. So the actual slope of the line would be the same if it were completely to scale. The gray line, though, are the targets that we need to show that we are meeting for our reasonable further progress element, the 3% annually per year. The orange and blue is the combination of our NOx and VOC emissions that shows where we are projecting to be. Again, the good news here is we are showing that we are ahead of the required curve in all years through the planned attainment of 2024. The other piece that we have to show for this, of course, is that we're actually going to attain by the 2026 deadline, in our case, attaining early 2024. So what we've done is we provide all this inventory data, the transportation conformity data from SACOG, and we work with our partner agency, the State California Air Resources Board, who goes into very detailed photochemical modeling. There's about 100 pages in this document. They're all modeling elements. If anyone's really interested in the science of it, you can take a look at it there. But basically, the photochemical modeling shows that we are projected to attain, actually even before 2024, but in order to give ourselves the margin, we were looking at the 2024 timeframe. If we get there early, that's going to be great as well. Some elements, though, that we're going to be watching for over these next few years, and some of these are the ones that are outside of our control. What is the impact of increasing warmer summers if that should occur? We know this past summer we had a record in July for days that were over 90 degrees. What is the impact that we end up seeing at the monitoring stations? What is going on with exceptional events such as wildfires? I know normally you would have had this probably back during the APCO briefing at the very beginning of this meeting, but I know that we just had a localized fire just over the county line yesterday that had some impacts in the region, certainly from a smoke perspective, but those can also impact our NOx and VOC readings at the stations in the ozone as well. So those are things that we're going to be very carefully watching and keeping track of over the next few years to make sure they're not impacting our attainment plan. We want to make sure that the state doesn't do any relaxation on their mobile and consumer product regulations. As you saw from the percents, we're very reliant on reductions that we're going to be getting from those type of regulations. And then just what the impacts of, and I know Dr. Ayala will be talking a bit later regarding legislation in 617, but just what are those impacts? How does that change anything for us? So those are all areas we're going to be keeping an eye on as we go forward in the next few years. So transportation conformity, I mentioned, is also one of the other pieces. And this is a piece that we have to take into account in the SIP plan, but a big piece of it's actually with SACOG. And so this is an area that we work very carefully with them. They provide us the numbers that they are looking for from an inventory standpoint for transportation purposes for their growth and planning over the next few years. We then put them into the plan and make sure that with those numbers in there, that we still believe we can attain the standard. So these numbers are something we talked with, worked very closely with the SACOG staff. The numbers were actually prepared and presented by them. Since they worked within our model, we didn't have to ask them to come up with any additional reductions. They also looked at control measures, transportation control measures as part of their plan as well. These are the numbers. Because they worked for our plan, they did take them to their board, first through committee and the full board, and they did approve those back in May of this year. From a public review standpoint, the full document was posted on the district's website back in July 24th in order to allow for a public comment period. We also publicly noticed on the same date the plan for a public hearing today on the plan, so if any members from the public wish to speak on it. We've also, at this point, we have not received any public comments on the plan. We did also send out over 4,000 emails to members of the public that are on our listserv who have asked to be notified about actions from the district. So in addition to just posting it on the website and everything else, we have actually had direct contact with anyone that has expressed an interest in any rule, regulation, or concern from the district over the years. The final steps in the review process for the SIP is, once we hope this board takes action today on it, is the other districts in the SFNA also have to take action. The dates of their scheduled board meetings are on this slide for your benefit. They usually prefer that we, as the largest agency who have taken the lead on the plan, go ahead and have our board hearing first, just so that they are aware if there are any questions or concerns come up, they can be better prepared to answer them in their settings, with a planned proposal of ARB taking it at their November board hearing, at which point then they will be submitting formally an amendment or a revision to the state SIP to EPA. So we believe that this plan meets the Federal Clean Air Act requirements. It establishes the new motor vehicle budgets, which will help SACOG move forward in terms of their plans and developments. California Resources Board, CARB, will include their weight of evidence during their amendment to the state SIP during their November board hearing, and it puts our region on early attainment for the 08 ozone standard. So at the conclusion of my presentation, we are asking that the board to conduct a public hearing on this matter, approve the attached resolution, which will adopt the regional plan and reasonable further progress, specifies that the plan meets the Federal Clean Air Act requirements, direct staff to file a notice of exemption for CEQA on this action, and directs us to move the plan forward to ARB. The one small addition I have on that is we did catch late that the resolution has one typo. Item Q, the reference of 42 USC 7410 lowercase I should actually be a lowercase l. They looked close enough together, so that is a typo that, should the board move the resolution forward, we ask
I want
that
to know
that
what
be
staff member
updated.
found that error, because that's impressive.
Alberto, did you find that? I missed it too.
And my
Lowercase
multiple
I to
readings, I
lowercase
missed that
L.
I versus an L as well. I think that's near the end, and so I think the I's were getting a little bit fuzzy at that point. I do just want to quickly thank the many partner agencies who were involved in this. Although the district staff certainly did the full line share on this, we did have El Dorado, Feather River, Placer, Yolo, Solano air districts reviewing the control measures as they applied to their areas. They had to review inventories for their specific air districts. We've worked quite collaboratively with both the Air Resources Board on the modeling, draft versions of the plan to make sure they were comfortable, that they felt it met all the requirements as well. Early discussions with EPA, although they haven't done their formal review, they've had a chance to review this document in advance as well. Of course, our partners with the Sacramento Area Council of Government, and then just a big thank you to all the program coordination division staff that worked on this. I do want to call out just one member in particular who actually retired last week. Otherwise, I probably would have had Charles Anderson up here speaking, as it was he and his staff who had done a big bulk of this work over the last couple of years. But it's a credit to that group and all the other staff of the district who have been involved in putting this document together. And with that said, if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them at this time.
Any questions for staff? Director Cerna.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know we have to open a public hearing, but I'm going to be prepared to move the item. I just wanted to make a request as the ARB representing those air districts that have been alluded to in the presentation. I'd appreciate a meeting before it goes to ARB.
Absolutely.
About, especially as it regards any public feedback on the plan as it goes through those 5 districts and their efforts to seek public comment. I'd like to have a clear understanding before I go put on the other hat down the street.
I'd be more than happy to do that, Director Cerna. And we've been in regular contact. We actually have bi-weekly calls with the other districts. We've made an offer to even be present for their board hearings, should they desire it. To date, none of them have taken us up on that. They do not anticipate any problems with it, but we will be more than happy to provide a briefing.
And perhaps what we could do is incorporate or have you present at my regular ARB briefing on the subject, and that way and can get both the perspective from how it went locally, and then also to how ARB staff expect to present it to that board.
Absolutely.
Okay, terrific. Thanks.
I'll second the motion.
Well, hang on, we have a public hearing to do. Director Daniels?
Yeah, just real quick, I'm glad you recognized that, I think it was Solano County that gave us their smoke, that it created some issue. But it does bring the point that, we could work our butts off, and they could do something like that to our west, and because of how the wind blows, here it all comes no matter how hard we work. So I hope that somehow that's kind of factored in when we get pushed to do so much stuff, when, again, we could do tons, and somebody could light a fire next door and destroy the day,
That's a great question. I'll take I can go into more detail if you like, but in the interest of time, I'll go with the short answer at the moment. Transportation elements are a part of the plan development. There is actually also a process for what are called exceptional events to get data excluded if they truly are an exceptional. Not having all the details yet on the nature and cause of the fire yesterday, I don't know if that would apply in that particular case, but certainly past very large forest fires that have happened and have had impacts, the district has been successful in going forward with an exceptional events finding to get data such as that excluded from the evaluation.
I think I can add to that. In the director's report, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail in terms of what happened in Yolo Solano. The best way to think about it was accidental, and we'll get into some of that detail, but certainly events like what we saw could happen, and we just need to be prepared to deal with them.
And then the other part is that some feel that the previous federal administration was a little over-regulated in the EPA, and that the current administration might not be so much. We had this attainment of severe that was awarded to us by the previous administration. Is it possible that as the current administration eases regulations in the EPA, that is possibly reevaluated, and some of the things that we feel we have to do to get to where we need to get to don't necessarily have to happen?
So the short answer to that one would be that for the existing standards, the 1997 and the 2008 standard are locked in, are sort of set at this point, and the time frames, if we also had a lesser standard, would require us to move up the time frame, which might present other problems in terms of the plans we have before us today. For the 2015 standard, though, the region has actually already been in discussion with EPA, even from the prior administration, because this is something that's been going on since 2015 on this. And the current plan is to propose something other than severe. We're actually proposing to go serious instead of severe under the 2015. The modeling shows moderate. The time frame to meet moderate, though, precedes our current deadlines. So we don't feel that that's appropriate, but we are requesting the intermediate level instead of severe.
Okay,
so there is absolutely an opportunity on that, and we are taking advantage of that as we speak.
And we have a question from Director Hansen.
Not necessarily a question. I just wanted to, Director Daniels.
Director Daniels.
Director Daniels. It's okay. We're going to get to the APCO report, but I did ask Alberto to look into what happened, Dr. Ayala, excuse me. And it was not a controlled burn. It was a controlled burn that became uncontrolled, and it was a big snafu, but he can go into that. And I don't expect Congress to change the Clean Air Act, which is one of your things about easing regulation. They're not going to let us out of this. And indeed, public health demands that we rectify some of this because of the incidence of asthma and other public health threats. So I think this is a great plan, and I'll third the motion and call for the vote.
So let's first, if there are no more questions for staff, let's go ahead and open the public hearing. I don't believe we have any public comment cards. Any other comments by members? Okay, I'll close the public hearing. And now I can take a motion. So I've got a motion from Cerna and a second from Guerra and a third from Hansen. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. And now, where on earth are we on this agenda? Oh, that's right. Item number 2, the Air Pollution Control Officer report.
The last item.
Dr. Ayala.
Thank you. I knew that we were going to miss a couple of you pretty soon, so we wanted to make sure that we had our discussion item, which needed your vote. But I appreciate your indulgence. My report is informational. But there are a number of items here, about 5 or 6 in total, that I want to put before you. These are important items that are going to be impacting us both at the staff level as well as you as our directors. So the first thing I want to touch on is just to give you a very quick update on where we are with respect to legislation, and specifically 2 pieces of legislation that you are going to hear us talk about in the future. At the July meeting, you may recall, those of you that were with us, we had our lobbyist come and give you a full report of all the legislation that we were tracking that impacted our activities. Director Lee asked for a document that actually summarized what we heard in verbal report, and we have generated that document and distributed it not only to Director Lee but also to the rest of you. I think it's a really nice, quick reference guide for you to use. And again, you're going to be seeing us come back to this point in the future. The reason we need to pay attention to what is happening right now is we are literally in the middle of negotiations. The legislature came back this week, and they are going to be convening all the way to September 15, and that is when they need to make final decisions in terms of the legislation that will move on to the governor for his approval or denial. The first thing that I want to put before you is the AB 617 and the AB 398 package of legislation. And this is really the shorthand for the extension of the cap and trade program out to 2030. The reason this is relevant is because you may recall that we as a district, as well as CAPCOA, the Association of all the districts in California, we actually opposed this legislation. And we were clear that we opposed it not because we don't think fighting climate change is important, and we didn't oppose it because we did not oppose it because we don't believe that cap and trade is effective. We opposed it because, as adopted, the legislation is imposing mandates on us that are not funded. So what we wanted to make sure is to open an opportunity for us as districts to have a conversation with the administration about funding. We are being asked to do a lot of new things that we basically do not have the funds for. So we need to engage in this conversation with the administration. And the reason I'm underlying this issue is because you, as our board of directors, may and will have a role in this issue, because we will need your support as we engage with the administration. The sub-bullet is also important, particularly for Director Cerna, who also serves on the Air Resources Board. He may recognize that some of his colleagues on the board think that permitting fees that we, the districts, certainly have authority to impose on our industries may be the way to close the gap in terms of the new requirements under the 617 and what we are expected to do. And what I want to propose to you is that, again, we may not necessarily have as much ability as some may actually think. Conversations will continue. We'll see where that ends. And I am anticipating, because, again, by September 15, we will know what has moved on to the governor. I am anticipating that we should consider having a legislative update for you at the next hearing, just to let you know where things ended up. The second piece of legislation, this is one that Director Hansen was particularly interested in, and I think it's a good point of discussion. It's AB 1132 by Garcia, and it provides new authority to the APCOs in California for new emergency abatement. What this is really very centric to some of the occurrences that South Coast had to deal with the Paramount issue and the Excite issue that you might have heard about. For us, I think is new ability that is good to have, so that we can respond to protect health in the event that we need to. But again, it's not something that we're going to be using lightly, or using lightly for that matter. I am anticipating convening with District Council. We are going to try to get our hands around exactly what this means, and particularly the process, because there is going to be process should the APCO see the need to take advantage of this new authority. We will bring that back to you and walk you through where we see this impacting us. And again, we're going to see how much we can include for you in the remaining 2 board hearings that we have in the year, in September and October. Real quickly, the next thing that I want to put before you is the Green City that many of you participated in. And again, the only thing I want to emphasize here is it was a great event. Sacramento, as the first designated Green City under the settlement agreement with Volkswagen, which created Electrify America. I think it's a great opportunity for all of us. We're going to be very engaged. And what you should remember is one of the reasons Electrify America is looking to work with us is because they are looking at our own car sharing program for disadvantaged communities that we kicked off in May, and they're looking at that as a perfect example to do more of. Our role, our recommendation is, and I've had this discussion with Mr. McNabb, the CEO of Electrify America already, don't just copy what we did. Take the lessons that we've learned and let's make it better, because we already have a number of significant lessons that we want to share with them. The next thing is also you should be aware that our agencies collectively, the county, the city, the air district, the utilities, the advocates, we are joining forces to work with an automaker on what we call a new partnership on education and community outreach on zero-emission vehicles. And what this is really is this particular automaker approaching us all and wanting to work with us to try to understand what needs to happen to better ensure that when somebody walks into a dealership and they want to buy a zero-emission vehicle, that they actually have the information and the decision-making elements that a person needs to make that decision. Anecdotally, we see the opposite happening. People walking in and wanting to buy a Volt or an EV and being talked out of that decision. And what this partnership is getting to is trying to understand, what really is going on. I mean, this is one of the major remaining gaps in our understanding of what needs to happen to promote the transition to electrification in transportation. So we think this is a really good opportunity for us, and we are likely going to be bringing you more information as more details emerge. So let's talk a little bit about fires. We put this on the director's report last week in response to what Director Cruz was dealing with in his area with what was at the time a small hay fire. And I say small because in that particular case, the impacts were only localized. But we saw yesterday and the day before what happened with our neighboring district. What I wanted to do here is simply just to give you an opportunity to reflect and to think about the fact that fire season is on, and there is definitely some impacts that we all need to be mindful of. You as our directors and we as the staff that need to send out notifications. We monitor situations. The ability to send alerts is really the extent of the things that we can do. However, as we saw with the fire in Solano County yesterday, there was a breakdown in communication. We should have got notification a lot sooner. In the event that we are made aware, we could have sent out notification to all of you. So when you receive calls and emails from your constituents, at least you're aware that authorities are on the ground, that we are trying to handle the situation. In the particular instance that we referred to of the fire yesterday, it was an authorized burn. We, all the districts in the region, we have a process to identify how much, given our local conditions and air quality, how much we can actually afford to let burn to deal with ag residue without impacting our air quality. What happened yesterday is basically an unauthorized acreage. They ended up burning about 3 times what was actually authorized. Clearly, they were asking for trouble, and it happened. They were not ready to deal with it. But I am confident that now we have the communication means to make sure that should that ever occur again, that at least we can get notification out. But the Yolo Solano district is very active trying to deal with the situation. Clearly, this was a violation, and clearly there is going to be an enforcement action. They send their apologies, and from my perspective, it's apology accepted. We just need to do better next time to make sure that we're all aware of these incidents. The last thing I really want to get to, and we're getting close to the end here, is I think it's something that you're going to appreciate because many of you sit on many other boards, and I have been pleased to be able to follow proceedings and discussions in some of these other agencies. But clearly, the future for us is really not to do our thing and operate in silos anymore, because when you consider the challenges before us, air quality is getting better, but we need to do more. We have the challenge of carbon emissions, and really when you talk about carbon, it really touches every aspect of our life. So what that means is really we need to do better to work with the agencies in our region that also have a responsibility for some of the issues that deal with our challenges with carbon and sustainability. SACRT, SACOG, and our district are prioritizing working together because we all touch transportation one way or the other, and I think it deserves some special attention, and we're doing that. I'm very pleased to report to you that we are having regular discussions now with the leadership at each of the agencies, not only the executive directors, but also the executive staff. And the other thing that I think is important to note is also the fact that I recognize that I need to get out of downtown. And I think that is important because you got to be on the grounds, and I'm one that likes to kick the tires. And for that to happen, you got to get in the car and drive up to the different areas that are actually part of our, as you heard, our attainment or non-attainment area. And then the final piece, the final point that I want to make for you, because it is related to partnership, is the fact that we're pretty active not only in our region but outside the state. The National Association of Clean Air Agencies, obviously, is a key forum for us to engage with the rest of the nation and the folks that are trying to do what we are trying to do. There's going to be technical conferences like the National Air Quality Conference that we're going to be attending. There's going to be a number of technical conferences. All of that really, when you put it together, is really translated into our ability to make sure that we stay connected and stay abreast of the information that is relevant to us. And at the same time that we share the great success that we are making, as you just heard in the previous discussion. And I think that's the end of the director's report.
Okay. Director Carr had a question?
Yes, if it's not too early, if we have learned some lessons from the ride share program, car share program, I'm very interested in knowing what those lessons are. And you could present that back in any form you like.
We are in the process of generating, documenting and generating a letter directly to Electrify America to capture some of those lessons. And you're absolutely right. I think that is worth a future discussion where we bring back, once we understand how Electrify America is going to approach their project, we can certainly bring that back to the board. I think there's broad interest in just exactly how they're going to deploy.
Thank you.
Director Lee.
I just want to thank you for organizing the list. That's very helpful for me. I appreciate it.
Director Hansen.
Hi, just on the Electrify America piece, I know that some of the board members have been engaged in it, but not all. On September 14th, the Local Government Commission has invited the CEO of Electrify America. I believe Alberto and a couple other folks will also be there for one of their local policymaking dinners. So if you haven't gotten that email, I can forward it to you, but I'd invite you to go. I think it'll be a good lesson. The only other thing that I think is important to clarify is a lot of people think the city received the money, but we received the designation, and then there's got to be a plan submitted by Electrify America to how they're going to spend it, but it is not the city's money to spend. I think that's an important thing just to note.
So whose money is it to spend?
That's a good rhetorical question, Mr. Chair.
Technically speaking, the Director Hansen is correct. This is an investment by Electrify America. The opportunity for us and the reason they came to us, and they fully recognize that, we have the chance to influence how that investment is made. And that's really how we are all approaching it.
But I also think, given the position of the city and the region and how many of your citizens and ours rely on this infrastructure, it would be really helpful to have you be part of that process, give input, so that we get it right, whether it's charging stations or car share programs or any of those other things.
Director Guerra.
Thank you, Dr. Ayala. I just wanted to thank you for scheduling the time to come out, and I think we're going out next week to look at the southeast Sacramento area, both the industrial and residential areas, and see the air quality impacts out there. I want to thanks for your commitment to venture out of downtown.
Thank you, Director Guerra. What he's referring to, and those of you that I've already met with personally, I'm making the commitment to come out and sit down with each one of you individually. That is an important part of our process, getting to work together. But I'm very much looking forward to hearing from you directly, and what are your priorities as it relates to this particular air district, and how we can be more effective to move forward in our objectives and challenges. So that's really what Director Guerra was referring to. And again, thank you.
Thank you. And without anything else, oh, actually, do we have any public comment?
No, we do not.
Great. Any board ideas or comments?
Yeah. So,
Dr. Harris.
board members, I wanted to make you aware of an initiative that I'm pretty excited about. I spoke to Dr. Ayala about it last evening. I've been driving an electric car for 4 years, and I'm a big proponent of electrical modes of transportation, and it's come to my attention that a project was started in the Fresno area to adopt completely electric-powered airplanes for training purposes. And it's a very unique program that I think has potential to bring to the Sacramento Valley region. It will reduce NOx and CO2 and VOC. It could really be a poster child as far as showing people that electric propulsion can be used for all modes of transportation. So I'll be working with the director of CalSTART down in Fresno to see if we can build a program similar to that at Sacramento Executive Airport. It has, Dr. Ayala is talking about the knowledge gap, in terms of EV adoption, and I think that this program could really help in that regard. As it happens, I'm a pilot, so I'm pretty excited about this. Electric-powered airplanes have been a long time discussed. Now they're becoming a reality with battery technology. Just as a point of information, several people have asked, how long can you fly? What sort of range does an electric airplane have? Currently, they have a range of about an hour and a half in the air, which for a trainer would be about 76 miles, which is not, obviously a cross-country machine, but really excellent for training people. And the amount of avgas you use in a trainer is about $50 an hour. The electricity to propel these airplanes is about $1.70 per hour. So what that means is that flight would be accessible to people of much lower means, which is a great thing. It could be a job creation opportunity as well. And they've targeted veterans and lower income areas to excite aviation in the area, and they've also actually saved a municipal airport with this initiative in Mendota. So I hope to bring back some more information to you in the future, and I'm pretty excited about this.
Thank you. Without any other announcements, we will stand adjourned.